March 18th, 01:20 a.m. Sam stood in front of the clock with no hands, lost in thought. The only audible sound was the eerie rustling of the wind, echoing through the house and occasionally rattling the door violently. Sam awaited the haunting toll of the clock with no hands, determined to break Sarah's curse by sacrificing himself, his last resort. Meanwhile, Elias sat on the staircase of the duplex house, engulfed into darkness beyond the sixth step, reciting prayers with closed eyes. This was the first recording on Sam's phone, discovered by Peterson, scattered throughout the house and among the forest trees. Now, in his motel room, Peter noticed a shift in Elias's demeanor. Elias ceased his prayers. Instead, he turned his head back and stared fearfully up the stairs. He rose to his feet and descended backwards, his eyes not on the stairs but fixed on something unseen. Peterson zoomed in on the darkness of the staircase but couldn't see anything, though he knew exactly what Elias was looking at. It was Ayla who had come back to Elias. She was coming down the stairs as Elias had retreated. Not far from the staircase, the sound of the clock with no hands echoed through the house. The phone displayed 1:24 a.m., and Peterson noted it down. Sam and Elias stared anxiously at the clock, and then at each other. Neither one of them knew what awaited them. With the end of the third chime, silence once again engulfed the house. Elias looked toward the darkness of the stairs, the last place he had seen Allah. Shortly after, he uttered a single word: "Gone." Sam noticed his gaze and repeated the phrase. This was the most significant event in the first film, and several subsequent films didn't contain any significant incidents until minutes after the final recording. 3:46 a.m. The wind's whispers had transformed into thunder, lightning, and rain. Elias sat on the three-seater sofa, trying to stay awake, but occasionally his eyelids would close. A bit further, Sam stood motionless in front of the large window, staring outside. They had been forced to break one of the window panes to enter the house, causing a gentle breeze to flow inside and stir the curtains and flicker the indoor lights incessantly. Suddenly, a bright flash of lightning illuminated the entire house, followed by the deafening roar of thunder, plunging the house into darkness. "Damn it!" Elias exclaimed before he could find his phone and turn on his flashlight. He scanned the room with the flashlight and suddenly fixed it on a spot where Sam had stood moments ago, but now there was no sign of him. With concern, Elias called out Sam's name a couple of times but received no response. He quickly went to Sam's phone, which was recording on the chimney, and picked it up to search for Sam. The only recorded sound was Elias's anxious breaths. Unable to find Sam. Shortly after, the sound of a door opening and closing caught his attention. He walked calmly towards the sound. From behind a small broken window, he noticed a wooden door being opened and closed slowly. Elias was intrigued by the strange movement, as he was sure there was no air circulation there. As he was thinking, the door abruptly slammed shut, and simultaneously a voice behind him whispered, "Someone's here." He quickly turned around, startled, and saw Sam staring at an unseen point. "Do you see it?" Sam asked, then raised his hand and pointed to a spot. Elias turned his flashlight towards where Sam was pointing. Except for the narrow hallway that seemed endless and led to the basement after the caretaker's room, nothing caught his eye. But Sam had seen something in the darkness. A figure of a woman draped in white, walking in the house, dragging something behind her like a limb detached from her body. "She's watching from the doorway," Sam said, and went straight to the basement. Elias saw nothing, but what puzzled him was the half-open basement door. The only place they hadn't managed to enter since they arrived at the house, because it was locked, and despite all their efforts, they couldn't break it. The old worn wooden stairs beneath the basement creaked under Elias's feet. The basement was dark and soulless, mostly serving as a graveyard for old and unused belongings. A large old bed was in the corner of the basement. The curtain around the bed was drawn, but a part of it was hanging in the air due to a broken rod. 2 old drawers, some boxes piled on top of each other, had occupied all the basement space. Sam's attention was drawn to the end of the basement behind the curtain around the bed. Elias, who had noticed the old fuse had blown, tried to restore power, toggling the switch to no avail. Suddenly, a sound made him quickly turn around. He grabbed the camera, pointing it towards the staircase where the sound was coming from. A sound like a creak. Everything seemed normal at first, but then something unexpected happened. An old baby stroller emerged from the darkness, and after a while it stopped near the bed. One of the front wheels of the stroller was broken, causing it to wobble and produce the creaking sound. The camera turned toward Sam. Sam, on the other side, was busy rearranging things to get to the end of the basement, and certainly hadn't set the stroller in motion. Peterson was staring at the video in disbelief, rewinding to confirm what he'd seen. He hadn't seen wrong. The stroller had moved for no apparent reason. He leaned closer to his laptop to see everything more clearly. Elias, with heavy steps and hitched breaths, headed toward the dark basement where the stroller had come from. An old wardrobe with one of its doors broken and a few women's dresses hanging inside. A tall lamp covered with a white cloth, and finally, some doll-like figures in fancy dresses, some of which were half-finished and had no facial features, were leaning against each other on top of the wardrobe. These were the only things noticeable in the video. But Peterson gradually realized Elias saw something else too. What appeared to be the simple fall of one of the dolls to the ground in the video was the biggest nightmare of Elias's life. The camera remained fixed on the dolls on top of the wardrobe, but due to Elias's trembling hands, the image was shaking intensely. Nothing was visible in the picture, but Elias's reaction indicated he saw something among the dolls on top of the wardrobe. This was understood from his frightened breaths and the sentence he stuttered in fear addressed to Sam. "The curse hasn't been lifted. Allah is here." Peterson, upon hearing this sentence, rewound the video again, trying to pay closer attention to the moment the doll fell. Absolute silence. The only sound was the clicks of Peterson's mouse as he tried to watch the video frame by frame. As the image progressed, Peterson's face showed increasing astonishment. He had a fundamental rule in life: believe only what you see. And now he was seeing with his own eyes something eerie emerging among the dolls, and something was happening that made him stop clicking and stare at the monitor. What he saw, he couldn't believe. An ambiguous image of Ayla's decayed face, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile, exactly as described in the tape, was seen among the dolls, while her bony hands gripped the edge of the wardrobe, and her elbows were above her head, like a wild animal about to attack. Almost 60, and after about 40 years of crime-solving under his belt, Peterson never thought anything could surprise him anymore. What was merely dismissed as fiction and subject of horror movies now unfolded before his eyes. As he attempted to capture the image, Allah vanished, leaving only an empty space between the dolls. It might have been a trick of light, or just a hallucination, or an unconscious reaction of Peterson's mind to hearing Allah's name, which he knew about beforehand. These were the assumptions Peterson quickly made to justify what he had seen. But the continuation of the film showed that Elias and Peterson were not the only ones shocked. Elias turned toward Sam and repeated his sentence, but before he could say anything else, he noticed Sam's strange condition. Sam, while staring at an unknown direction, began to retreat calmly. Peterson tried to understand what was happening, but the table between the camera and Sam obstructed his view. and the frantic movements of the camera yielded only vague, unsettling images. Although one thing was clear: something had frightened Sam. The sentence he uttered was strange. It was her child, the one dragging on the ground. They died here. Elias couldn't make sense of Sam's incoherent words, except that he was talking about a woman he had seen a few minutes ago dragging something on the ground. The fear and dread experienced by Sam and Elias in the basement, coupled with the chaotic footage from their panicked exit, were the last traces left on Sam's phone. Peterson didn't know what had happened to Sam and Elias afterward. Sam's car was still parked in front of the house after 10 days, while the driver's side door and glove compartment were left open, indicating that Elias and Sam hadn't left the area. However, his mind was preoccupied with more important questions, like the identity of the woman's corpse he had found in the basement. But contrary to what Sam had said, there was no child involved. Reviewing photos of the corpse on his phone, Peterson observed the grotesque aftermath of acid corrosion, a face and body marred by decay, one eye missing, the other displaced, a swollen nose and teeth exposed where the lower jaw should have been. It was evident the victim was a woman. The body had been sent to forensics for autopsy and identification hours ago. The only thing Peterson knew was that the murder happened after Catherine's death and the abandonment of the house. He couldn't sleep with so many questions on his mind, especially since he had seen something in Sam's phone videos that didn't match the evidence, and there was only one way to investigate it. So, without any hesitation, he got up and walked to the house on the hill in the dark of the night. Before discovering the corpse and informing the local police, he had thoroughly examined the house point by point. Everything was exactly as he had heard on the recorded tape, and this made him not overlook even the smallest details, although he still couldn't relate the case to demons and evil spirits. He only knew one demon, and that was the human itself. However, with the night falling, he asked the officers who had come to investigate the crime scene to leave the house, and now he himself returned to the house alone. Peterson knew well that in solving this case, what he didn't see was more important than what he saw with his own eyes. So he waited patiently until the clock struck midnight, and now he too was part of the curse. The murder case was not within Peterson's jurisdiction, which is why he didn't have permission to enter the crime scene. However, he knew well that whatever happened in that house was connected and leading to one place. For this reason, without leaving a trace, he entered the basement. The basement was almost the same as last seen in the video, except for the yellow police tape surrounding the crime scene. The murder had taken place in the basement. Even the acid used to burn the body had been taken from the small utility room at the end of the basement, but Peterson had come for something more important. He took out Sam's phone and replayed the final part of the video in the basement while trying to stand in the exact spot where Sam had stood in the video. Understanding it wasn't difficult. He was now sure that what Sam had seen had no connection to the corpse found in the cabinet, as the cabinet was exactly behind him, not where Sam had been staring. He moved aside a few boxes and tools and looked momentarily at the spot where Sam had been gazing. Apart from the wall paneling and the well-preserved basement floor, which seemed to have been there for a long time, nothing strange caught his eye. He pulled out his UV flashlight and tried to find traces. Except for a few stains and traces left by mice, everything seemed normal. But when the bare and injured legs of a woman appeared under the light for a fraction of a second, Peterson froze and took a few steps back. He had left the house along with the other officers in the dark and had never heard the sound of the clock striking midnight. But now he was experiencing a hallucination for the second time. He tried to regain control and keep the light on the same spot. There was no trace of what he had seen, but the roughness of the floor where he had seen the legs caught his attention. He barely moved the floor tile aside. Peterson didn't understand the meaning of the three-letter word written on the ground, but it seemed to be part of a larger text. He picked up a pickaxe from the utility room and started smashing the other floor tiles, and threw his UV flashlight back onto the concrete basement floor. What seemed like just a few random letters suddenly manifested itself as a phrase written in a strange and crooked handwriting. "I won't forgive." Peterson was amazed at what he had found, pondering only one thing: an urban legend about a curse he had encountered at the beginning of his investigation into the house on the hill, the curse of Abigail.